as an adult that you could have done when you were a kid. Yeah, I probably could have paid a lot. Could have paid my way through college there if I'd added just a little bit of vodka or something in there, right? But yeah, I always had that entrepreneurial spirit, and I have a tendency to kind of go. A lot of people have that need to get themselves started, and I'm kind of the opposite. And we were talking a little about this before, where I'm the kind of guy who has an idea and immediately starts sprinting, and I have to talk myself down. And that started at an early age. Both my parents are very entrepreneurial. My grandparents owned a carpentry business, so they or drapery, not carpentry. They owned a drapery business, and so I've always been around entrepreneurs. My brother is a very successful entrepreneur as well. So it runs in the family. It's something that we were taught when we were really little, that, you had to make something of yourself, don't work for somebody else. I as a little kid always thought, I'm never going to have a desk job. That was very I was very anti desk job when I was a little kid. And that's always something that whenever anybody asked what I wanted to be, it was, well, I wanted to make something that was mine, And when I was about 12 years old, I told everybody I wanted to be in the radio industry. And so I interned, did like a shadow at this radio station, Mix 107.3 in DC. If you're in the DC area, you probably remember it. I don't know if it's still on the air anymore. But it was this like Hot Today's, whatever. My mom listened to it, and so she called in and got me this shadow. And so I shadowed the afternoon DJ and did all that and named myself Reese's. So my initials are RE. So RE says, and Eminem was really big back then. So it was like, all right, well, he's Eminem. I'm going to be Reese's. And so yeah, I was always just been this creative, kid who just a lot of people thought I was crazy for a very long time. Whereas there goes Roy again, And so I picked up turntables when I was about 15 and was charging people to DJ at parties, and then went off to college and became a DJ at clubs. And I became the head DJ at, it's not there anymore, but it was the Lazy Lizard is what it was called. And for anyone who goes to West Virginia now, it's called Joe Mama's. And we were the #1 party bar at the #1 party school in the nation. So I went to West Virginia University, and we had Playboy come through, and I opened up for Mixmaster Mike and DJ Scribble, for anybody who's old like me and remembers TRL. He was one of the DJs there. And so after college, went on to Sirius XM and worked there for a little bit, and started my own podcast. And I thought I was going to be a radio guy, and then like many other entrepreneurs out there, things don't always end up the way that you think they're going to. And I learned a bunch of lessons. A lot of valuable lessons along the way, and applied them to where I'm at now. Although I'm in a totally different field, I'm not really in the radio industry anymore. I do run a podcast, but it totally took me another direction, and thank God it did, because we're a lot, I'm a lot happier now than I probably would have been working as a radio guy for somebody else and not necessarily being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think you probably made the right choice. I don't know if there's a lot of money to be made in DJing unless you become world famous, which is very competitive field, by no means to get into. So what kind of led you to, Capital Presence is a government company. We talked a little bit in the past about what you do, but, you're in a space that's maybe not considered as glamorous for an entrepreneur working in the government field, and you're in software. How did you, become a subject matter expert in Microsoft and realize that hey, this is something we could be doing and doing business towards the government, and, create a business around that?
Yeah. So I think you just kind of hit on it a little bit there, where radio personalities don't make any money, right? Unless you're like Howard Stern, or you don't even have to be Howard Stern to make a lot of money, but unless you're one of the big guys that everybody knows, which I wasn't, you don't make any money. And so for the first about 4 or 5 years of me being in the radio industry, and I was working for free. It was basically in exchange for airtime. So if you're a radio personality, you either pay for your own airtime when you're starting out. You either pay for your own airtime from the radio station, and then get to collect any ads that you sell for yourself, which was entrepreneurial, and that was cool at first. But we weren't really making much money doing that. So that's one way you can go about it. Or you can start with a base salary that's usually really low, and then you're producing other people's shows and you get your own airtime on like a Sunday morning, kind of a thing when you're outside of the regular air. Those are generally the two like intro level radio gigs. And so while I was doing that, producing for SiriusXM and working for free for an ESPN affiliate who had picked up my podcast, I was working for the government. So I was a government employee. My wife and I were both government employees. And so I was basically my first job out of college that actually had a salary. And so I worked for the government, and I have this background in web development and web design. And so they were like, hey, Roy, we have some things here that we need help with, like little things like, hey, we need to calculate, a score for somebody that, how many days they are in the office is one numeral, and it adds all this stuff up, and then you get a score. And that's how they decided who got a window office. Right. And so they were doing it manually with a calculator. And I was like, well, why don't you just build it in Excel? And, I built it for them, and they're like, whoa, this is really cool. Here, build our SharePoint site. Nobody knew anything about SharePoint, and they just handed it over to me because I had web design. So I took over the project and learned it relatively quickly. And then all of a sudden became the lead SharePoint developer for the Office of Generic Drugs during the Obama administration. So they turned the Office of Generic Drugs into a super office pretty much overnight, with the release of the Affordable Care Act. You've probably heard of it. And so in that time, I wrote about 200 to 400 SOPs, which are standard operating procedures, and built out this infrastructure on Microsoft SharePoint, having zero previous knowledge about SharePoint, but did it for about 600 employees. And I was overseeing contractors from like Deloitte and Booz Allen. And so in doing this, I learned the best practices very quickly, because it wasn't that much different from web development and stuff like that. And in a meeting, so I had a meeting with some of the directors in the biology division, and they were like, Roy, do you have any idea how much money you would make if you were a contractor? Because at the time I was making like nothing. Right. And you don't move up in the government. You get you get a raise like every year as long as your performance is good, but those raises are like minimal, right? Like you don't get like a major promotion in the government. You have to go after a role that's, you basically are applying for a new role every couple of years, right? So it came to the point where I had to apply for a new role or leave. And people in the government are like, man, you need to get the hell out of here. Like go contractor. You can always come back. So that was like always my fallback. It was like, okay, like I can always come back to the government, or I could, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. And so my first job out, I got a job at Veteran Affairs, and I got an award. And so I have Crohn's disease, which anyone who knows me knows that very well. And so while I was working for Veteran Affairs, I had a really bad flare-up with my Crohn's disease, which put me in the hospital. And I ended up having surgery. I had about 1.5 feet of my intestines removed. And I was in the hospital for like 2 weeks or something. I don't know. I was in the hospital for a long time. A lot of morphine. Don't know exactly how long I was in there. And so while I was in the hospital, I took like 1.5 days off of work, working for somebody else. And so that's why I got that award. That was obviously like I did a good job, and it was really innovative and built a lot of cool stuff for the VA, but I took like no days off and was literally worked from a hospital bed. And so I'm sitting here in a hospital bed with my intestines hanging out of my body, literally. Don't Google ileostomy if you have a weak stomach. And so I'm in a hospital bed with all this, having not taken any leave, working for somebody else, still really not making that much money. I was making okay money, better money than I was in the government. And I had always teased that I was going to start a company. And I'd actually bought the domain, and we had filed LLC at this point, but it was mostly just like doing odd jobs and stuff like that, just kind of a side hustle. And I was like, you know what? We're doing it. And so my wife and I, that was 2016, and my wife and I went all in on Capital Presence. And we never turned back. She quit her job. She was pregnant with our third kid when she quit the government, which a lot of people called her crazy at the time, being like, what are you doing? You have a cushy government job. You're pregnant. You're going to lose your health insurance. Like, this is not a smart move. But we believed in ourselves, and we believed in our training. And, you know, the internet is a beautiful place where you can learn just about anything these days. And we studied hard on cloud computing, and with the relationships that we had built up, and we had a lot of people telling us to do it, including just about every director I've ever had was like, Roy. First, the government people were like, Roy, you need to get out of the government. Then the guy who gave me an award at the VA was like, you need to get out. Go do your own thing. You're like at a chop shop right now, you know? So yeah, I mean, between the drive, the knowledge, the training, it was not a hard decision. It was just getting it going, you know? It was, I say it was the scariest and the best day of my life, the first day that I was unemployed.
I know that feeling when your first day, like, oh crap, it's all on me to go out and deliver. But you know, your wife left her job as well to go out and help start this with you. And you know, clearly you've had some entrepreneurial experience in your background. You probably don't fit the typical mold of a government employee, but was your wife of similar mindset? Like, how did she kind of like get bought into your idea? And does she run the crazy end of the gamut as you, or she help out keeping you a little bit more balanced?
I mean, she is married to me, so she's got a little bit of crazy, right? So no, but actually her grandparents, so she comes from a very entrepreneurial family as well. So her grandparents founded the Dundalk Eagle, which was a newspaper in Baltimore, Maryland. Kimball Elke is his name, and he was a reporter, and basically was promised a promotion, didn't get it, and then basically was like, screw you guys, I'm starting my own paper. Left the industry, went and started his own paper. And so as a little kid, she was always told, if you want something, go get it, you know? So she has a very entrepreneurial mind as well. So that's always been a part of her. But when she worked for the government, she worked in the legal department. And as you might imagine, the Office of Generic Drugs gets sued just about every day. So she saw a lot of the, you know, ins and outs of the workings of the government, you know, the paperwork, everything that goes around working in and being around in the government. So she handles the level-headedness of our business very much. I'm still very much the crazy mind bouncing off the walls, you know, possibly undiagnosed adult ADHD guy over here, right? And she keeps me grounded. She's like, Roy, you're being an idiot, you know, like, take it down a notch. Let's focus in on this, and let's get it done. You know, she's my boss. Technically, we're a woman-owned small business, so she's the CEO. So yeah, I mean, she keeps me grounded, and she has we complement each other very well. She has she likes to read contracts. I don't. You know what I mean? Like the little administrative things and stuff like that. She loves that stuff. So no, we complement each other very well, and she definitely has an entrepreneurial background.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would say starting a business with your spouse, pretty risky in not just in the financial aspect, but in the happiness of your day-to-day life, right? Like happy, what is it? Happy life, happy wife, happy life, you know, and how have you been able to navigate working with your spouse and keeping, you know, a successful business running, but also making sure that there's, you know, a separation for family and, you know, husband and wife activities?
Yeah. So I would love to tell you that it's really easy and we, you know, we don't go to bed angry and, you know, we put the business away at night, but that's not true, right? Like I'm up until 2 a.m. thinking about how we're going to get the next dollar and how we're going to make payroll, and just like every other entrepreneur, right? So, you know, in the beginning, it was really tough, like really, really tough, because every little bit counts when you're starting out. You know, it was terrifying. I went from making really good money as a contractor in my last contracting gig before going entrepreneur to making like $8 an hour ish, maybe even less that first year in business. And she made $0. So as a family, we're taking in very, very little money. And we already had 2 kids at the time, and she was pregnant, and it was scary. But, you know, at the end of the day, you have to remember you're on the same team, right? Like, we want the same thing. So yeah, it's scary, and there were fights, and it was rough, and there was, you know, are we doing the right thing? And, you know, tenfold because we have kids and a mortgage, and it was just like, it was scary. It was really scary. But my wife and I have this, you know, thought process where, you know, the best days are always ahead, right? And so we always say, whenever we're going through anything, troubles, I'll say, without cursing on your show, whenever we're going through a pile of it, we always say, I can't wait for the lesson that I'm going to learn out of this. You know, we're going to learn something awesome out of what we're going through, because we are going through it right now. And so, you know, when there was a point where her and I, we were living in a townhouse in Baltimore that, you know, was not in a very good neighborhood, and we were scrounging together money to go grocery shopping at Dollar Tree to buy cheese for grilled cheese that wouldn't melt. Like that, like that's like a real memory that we have. It was like, hey, babe, remember the cheese that wouldn't melt for our grilled cheese? You know, like I had to take a loan. This is a real story. I had to take a loan out of my 3-year-old's piggy bank. I had to get $5 out of his piggy bank to buy a pizza so that everybody could eat from one of those hot and ready pizzas. I forget what, Little Caesars, right? They have those $5 meals or whatever. Yeah, I had to take it out of my son's piggy bank to go get dinner for the family one night. So I mean, we went through it, you know, but like it's all mindset, right? Like you have to know your best days are ahead of you. You have to know you're all in it together. You know, she's not my enemy. Obviously she's my, you know, she's my better half. She's my wife. So we're in this together. So, you know, I wouldn't have been able to do it without her. I know that. And so, you know, that's kind of a benefit of it, right? Is, yeah, you can open up a business with other people, and I have, but at the end of the day, your business partners they're not aligned with you in the same way that a family member is. You know, they're thinking about their personal interests. And not every business owner is bad. And I'm not saying that, you know, anything else, but I've had 5 other business partners, and they're all gone. Yeah. She's the only one that's still with me.
Those other business partners, like you said, they have different alignments, right? And they might be aligned in the business at one point, but they might have something come up family wise in another, and all of a sudden their priorities have shifted. Maybe not necessarily in a bad way or a devious way, but just the business is not the priority it was, and you can't continue on with somebody not all the way in on the making it work, especially when it's just getting started. And you talked a bit about the better days ahead, and I think about this a lot as you go. I don't know about you, but I think about this is would you change anything in your life? And you go back and you go through, okay, well, if this bad thing didn't happen, would my life be better? And then like every step takes you back. Like for me, it's like, okay, if this didn't happen, that didn't happen, that didn't happen, I don't have my son, you know?
Right.
And if I don't have my son, then my life isn't better, right? It's in a worse spot. So like, there's just nothing that you can go back and go, hey, all those bad experiences, there's not one I would redo differently because it's taken me to where I am. And there's always been a better day, like you said, that came out of any bad experience. So when I kind of realized that, it started changing my mindset of like, hey, when I'm in a position that doesn't feel good, it doesn't feel like I'm having, you know, if you're in a winter season in your life, it's not like, oh man, my life sucks. It's like, you know what? I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to kind of dig in and like feel the pain, right? I'm going to enjoy it because I'm going to pull through. And every time I pull through, something better, something stronger comes out of that. It's like, you know, rising Phoenix from the ashes. It's like, okay, we know good stuff's going to come out of this bad experience. So let's just freaking dig deep and ride it out and grim and bear it and try to enjoy the pain a little bit. I don't know if that's
you're totally
or not.
Yeah, I mean, so I always say things don't happen to us; they happen for us. You know, like, so I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease at age 12. So a lot of as far back as I can remember, I've always been like, quote, different. You know what I mean? Like, I say that in quotation marks. I was different. Like, I remember laying in bed at night when I was a little kid and praying and being like, God, why did you do this to me? Like, why can't I just be normal? You know, like, I remember I had cysts in my arms that I had to get surgically removed, and I had Crohn's disease, and I was taking like 30 pills a day. And I'm like, God, why are you doing this to me? You know? And if he hadn't, you know, if I hadn't had Crohn's disease, I would have taken a drastically different route. I, for one, would have gone to a different college, because the college that I chose it partially because it was close to home and close to my doctor. I would have gone to a different college. So if I had not gone to the college that I went to, I probably wouldn't have been a club DJ, which probably wouldn't have led me down to it, which I wouldn't have met my wife. I met her in a bar when I was working. She came back to request a song. So I wouldn't have met her. And so it's like this series of events that, like, I will never say that I'm happy that I have Crohn's disease, because it's not something that you like, I'm going to joke about and be like, oh man, yeah, go Crohn's disease, you know? But without it, it was a valuable teacher for me. And we all have whatever it is. You know, for me, it's Crohn's disease. For other people, it could be addiction. For other people, it could be a divorce in the family. But whatever it is, whatever that thing is that has taught you that valuable lesson and continues to teach you daily, those are invaluable lessons that you wouldn't have been able to learn elsewise. And the creator, I think it's God, says that is the way, and that is the path to force you to learn those lessons that are going to end up making you a better person and become the purpose of why you are put on this earth. So yeah, dude, absolutely, dude. Yes.
Now, you talked a little bit, so I'm going to be changing subjects on you a little bit, because I don't want this to last forever. We probably could talk. You weren't kidding when you said you could talk, right? I was like, this podcast will last 2 hours if we're not careful. But you talked a little bit about, you always got your mind thinking, you're up to different things, you're constantly thinking. So I already know this, but obviously the listeners don't know. But what are some of the other things you got cooking that you're looking to influence the world with?
Yeah. So with my technical background in software engineer, there's something called the agile methodology, right? And so bear with me for a second, everybody out there, while I talk about some nerdy stuff real quick. In agile methodology, right, it pretty much centers around CI/CD. And so CI/CD stands for continuous integration and continuous development. So in basic terms, this means when your apps or your software on your phone, think of your iPhone, and it says, hey, Roy, the new release of iOS is out, you better update it. That's CI/CD. That's software development. So you're constantly upgrading, you're constantly developing. And so being in that and living in that for so long, I looked at it and I said, you know what? People could use this in everyday life. It doesn't have to be software that we're constantly evolving and constantly developing. It could be ourselves. And so from that, over years of doing this, I've integrated what we call bricks at Capital Presence. And so bricks are our 5 mission critical daily tasks that you have to get done. Is no matter what else it is that you've got going on. You could be, you know, running trainings. You could be doing, you know, obviously you have to go to lunch at some point. There's meetings you have to go into. There's clients that are going to be banging down your walls for maybe something broke. Whatever it is, you have to hit those 5 mission critical daily tasks. Those are your bricks. And we call them bricks because a mansion isn't built in a day, but you can lay a few bricks and eventually you'll have a mansion. And so from that methodology, I've built out mind maps, daily planners, and thought about, you know what, maybe we could take this even further from just templates and teaching other government agencies how to implement this change. Maybe we can bring this even further into somebody who's trying to lose weight, or somebody who's just doing whatever it is, helping them to reach a goal, or as we call them, epics. And so that's where the Innovari podcast comes from. So I started this passion project. Actually, I've been doing it for a little while, but it really started to become to the forefront during COVID, because I really was interested in how people were starting to innovate through this time. And so we were saying, it was like, look, like now that COVID has hit, you can't go back. It's not business as usual.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like if you're a winery and you rely on a lot of people coming in and buying your wine or doing wine tastings, you can't just sit there and be like, well, they'll be back. The government literally said you cannot go to places, so businesses had to evolve. They had to innovate. They had to think of new things. You have this contactless delivery and outside seating and virtual wine tastings and all this other stuff. So I started interviewing local businesses is how it started, and asking them just, how are you dealing with this? How are you dealing with the regulations? Which evolved into just overall personal development. Like, as people, how can we constantly integrate into our lives new ideas, new philosophies, new diets, new exercise, whatever it is, to constantly develop ourselves? So we took that software development mentality and made ourselves, with the idea that ourselves are our best software. That's like our best project, not some computer program. It's ourselves. So that's what I've been working on now, is just trying to bring that to the everyday entrepreneur. And so that's where the Innovari podcast comes from. And then we have a private Facebook group called Innovari Mindset, which is like-minded entrepreneurs who all come from a similar background, that are all trying to innovate, think of new ideas to better themselves. And so they bounce ideas off of each other. And so that's where that's where it's headed, is this building and this group of entrepreneurs who, at the core, want to better themselves and better the world.
Mm-hmm. And I like the idea of it being centered around a Facebook group and you're building a community, because, part of innovation it comes from the combination of ideas that you wouldn't have had otherwise on your own, right? It's like, hey, you have an idea and I have an idea, but combine those two ideas and some new idea comes out of it. Maybe it's those two ideas added together, Reese's peanut butter and M&Ms mixed together, or what I was thinking, chocolate and peanut butter, like the commercial, right. Or maybe it's like, hey, neither one of these ideas are good, but this teamwork that we've brought together can work, and we could take it to this other idea, or something like that. So having a group of like-minded people talking about innovation, but also tools. I think action needs to happen. Ideas are big. They influence where we go with our actions, right? But everybody's got ideas, and execution is where the magic really happens, is giving people tools to help facilitate action, right? And take better action, and realize, we talked a little bit about this, like being crazy, jump in feet first without thinking about the consequences, right? And I've done this, and you probably, I don't know if you do the same thing, but like, I'll be like, all right, I'm going to go start something new, and and I start making a things of all the things I'm going to do. I'm going to use a workout program as an example, because this one works for me. Is like, okay, I'm going to start a new workout program, and day one, I'm going to go do like 7 rounds of squats by 12 reps, and leg press and leg curl and all this stuff. And it's like 50 bazillion things on the list. I'm like, I'm going to do that this day. And then I'm going to also combine this and this and this. And then I get to the end of the list and I go, I didn't save room for bench press. Well, I can do bench press on the first days. And so like this amount of workload that's going to happen in this program to get me in shape is like all dialed in. It's like, I'm gonna go out and do it. And then you do it the first day and it's like, it's too much. Right. And then the second day, you're trying to make up what you didn't get done the first day. And you very quickly fall off the wagon, because it's like, it's just not sustainable and it's not possible. But when you go back to like, hey, it's less important to go balls to the wall or out the gate and give up. You like 120, like nobody can go 120, red line it every day, but go 80%, right? Go 80% every day for a year. And you're gonna get further than going 120% for a week. And so it's those bricks, right? It's those critical bricks you're laying every single day. And if you are consistent and you show up every day and lay those bricks, you're going to come back at the end of the year and go, look at that mansion I built, instead of just look at that pile of bricks I laid the first day and never showed back up since. So I like that example.
Yeah, there's 2 things that my dad used to preach to my brother and I. The first one was losing sucks and tying's like kissing your sister. So that was preached to us when we were very little. It was like you play to win the game. Losing sucks and tying's winning your sister. So you don't tie. and you win, and you better go all in if you want to win. That was the first one. But the second one that he always used to say was hold your horses. And I don't know if that makes sense to anybody these days, but hold your horses, it's roots in horse racing. And so if you've ever watched a horse race, the first horse race that breaks straight out of the gate and is, first ahead on the first quarter mile or whatever, is usually not the horse that wins, right? Sometimes, sure, they'll hold them off. There's those super horses every once in a while, but generally speaking, the horse that comes out the gate sprinting is a short racetrack horse, and he is not sustainable, and he's not going to win the big one. It's usually the horse who has gone, paced himself, held back a little bit for the home stretch for when it really matters. And so if you take that into entrepreneurship, and exactly what you're saying, if you go balls out day one without really a plan, and you're just like, I'm going to run, then it might work for a week. It might work for a month. It might work for 3 months, but in the long run, it's not sustainable, and you're going to burn yourself out. And then something that you were extremely passionate about, it could be the greatest thing in the world. It could be riding roller coasters. It could be the most fun thing in the world. But if it is looking like work to you, and it is burning yourself out and it is draining your energy, you're not going to want to do it. So that's what you really need to. That's why it's not 10 bricks. It's not 7 bricks. It's not 15 bricks. It's 5 bricks on purpose. Because if you try to do anything more than that, you're not going to last. So you need to hold your horses. That was one of the most important things that I ever learned growing up.
I grew up with that hold your horses too. Yeah. And I remember my grandmother always saying that. So I want to wrap this up with a question I always ask everybody, but what does it mean to you to be all in? Yeah.
So I actually just had a podcast on this not too long ago. And so to me, if you give half-ass effort, you're going to get half-ass results. And so the universe or God or whatever you want to call it, there is a law out there that I point to a bunch. It's called the law of attraction, right? And so within the law of attraction, which stems from, thousands and thousands of different methodologies and it's been around for thousands of years, right? And what I like to point to the most is there's a Bible verse in Matthew. It's Matthew 7:7, and it says, "Ask and you will receive, knock and the door will be opened," right? So there's a couple of different things there, right? First, you have to ask. And in order to ask, you have to be very specific. And the second thing there is you have to knock. You have to take action. You have to physically go and do something. You can't just sit around and ask, because then nothing will happen. And you can't just go and knock. You can't just go and act without knowing what it is that you want, because you might not even know where to knock. You might not be knocking at the right door. You might not even be in the right neighborhood, right? So you need all the different pieces. So in order to go all in, you first have to have a plan and get specific. I had my family, we pray together every night. And my son said the other night praying, I said, "Avery, what would you like to pray about?" And he said, "I pray that we have a good day tomorrow." And I said, "Okay, that's very thoughtful of you. Thank you for praying that, Avery, but what does a good day mean to you?" And he kind of looked at me and he was like, "Well, what do you mean we're going to have a good day?" I said, "Well, do you mean good weather? Are you saying that because it rained today? Does it mean good as in you hope that we're all healthy, that nobody gets hurt? Is it good in a sense that we get to go have fun with our friends? Like, what is good?" So in order to go all in, you have to first know what it is that you're going after and get extremely specific about it. So if you want a house, and before you even go buy that house, you need to know, what credit score do I need in order to get this loan, right? Reverse engineer it. What credit score do I need? How do I get that credit score? What do I need to pay down? Okay, that means I need to pay $100 to each of these credit cards every single month in order to get my credit score to the appropriate level in which to buy this house, right? That's the ask. Those are the steps I need to take. Then the second step is action. You can't get the house without applying for a loan. And then you might want to take action to say, okay, well, I'm going to go start eating at restaurants in that neighborhood to trick my brain into thinking that I already live there. So it just becomes habit. I'm going to go eat that restaurant. This is now our favorite restaurant. When we go to our pizza places, we know that in a couple of years, we're going to be moving to this neighborhood, and our pizza place is about 20 minutes away. Makes no sense. but it's because we're going to be living there in a couple of years. And so we go to the park there. We eat our ice cream there. We eat our pizza there. And it's to condition ourselves to get used to that as habit, so that when we do move there and we are taking those actions in order to purchase this home and do all those other things. But that's what going all in is you have to know what you're asking for, and you have to know what actions that you're taking. Because otherwise going all in, because it doesn't mean anything if you're not being specific.
Mm-hmm. I like your idea of reverse engineering. I always say when you're visualizing what it is you want, like when I've created the law of attraction in my life happen, it's not like mumbo jumbo, like, hey, I wish this would appear and it magically appears, right?
Right.
It's about visualizing an experience and knowing the steps it takes to make it happen. And when you know it's possible, then it's easier to accomplish, right? So if you decide like, hey, I want an ice cream cone, but you have no money, you're not going to magically appear an ice cream cone in your hand, but you can visualize a way to come up with $3 to go get one. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about this house, like I make it, instead of like, oh, I want this house. Well, why do I want this house? Because it looks nice, or, you know, I gotta, whatever. It's experiences I'm going to create in there. So I start visualizing what's happening. You know, why do I want this big house? Do I want this big house because it's got a big kitchen, the family can be there? What's the family doing? Like you said, oh, we're having a good time. Well, what's a good time? Like conversations, cooking, you know, Thanksgiving, all these things. And so this experience becomes real. And then you go, okay, what actions am I taking in my life to bring me closer to that or not? And so sometimes like we might say like, hey, say you're taking a job, like this is going to pay you $1 million a year. And you're like going to get paid a bunch, but you're going to work a ton. You're going to work 80 hours, 90 hours a week. You're going to be traveling. You're not going to be home with your family, but your vision is in alignment of having quality time with your family and, you know, being at home and raising the kids and stuff like that. So if your vision is in alignment with what the steps you're taking, even though you could go buy this really, really nice house that you want, but it's not giving you the experience you want, it's not in alignment. So it's not going to bring you the happiness, the fulfillment that you're looking for. So your steps have to also be in alignment, just as they are if like you're working a dead end job and hoping that one day the lottery is going to show up at your house so you can buy this house. That's not going to happen either. So you have to be in alignment of taking the steps to take you closer to that thing, having a plan, having an action step. And you even brought up some stuff I didn't even think about. It's just like stupid things like, is your credit score in place, right? Well, if it's not, start taking steps to get it in place, and all that starts bringing you closer towards it. So I love your answer with all in. So let me ask you, who are you trying to get connected to? Where's your ideal audience?
Yeah, my ideal audience are entrepreneurs. So somebody who's trying to better themselves, somebody who has crazy ideas or has been said that their ideas are crazy. I've had some pretty crazy ideas in my life. I come from a very entrepreneurial family, and my dad has called me crazy, and he's like, dude, you're crazy. And that's coming from a guy who thought that he was going to sell masks a couple months ago. He was like, I'm going to open up this huge factory in Florida to build masks. I'm like, Dad, you're crazy, but welcome, because we're all crazy here, right? So yeah, I'm looking for entrepreneurs, somebody who's going to better themselves, and somebody who is going to bring worth to the Innovari mindset, who wants to work with other entrepreneurs who have equally or just as crazy ideas as they do, that they can bounce ideas off each other. And, you know, I always say it's not about ideas, it's about making ideas happen, right? So somebody who has those crazy ideas, but is not afraid to take the first step.
Awesome stuff. So where can they go if they want to get connected to you?
Yeah, so the easiest way to probably get connected to me is innovaripodcast.com. And then there's a contact form right there. Or you search for me as Roy G. Edwards on just about any social media platform, and you'll find me. I'm pretty active on Instagram. And you can find me on Facebook as well as Roy Gregory. So, but if you're on Facebook, find Innovari Mindset, and then and we'll connect that way.
Awesome stuff. So all that'll be listed there in the show notes for you. And I encourage you to reach out and connect with Roy. And if you do, make sure you tell him you heard him on the All In podcast with Nate Peo. So great having a chat here with you, Roy. Really enjoyed it. I think we're probably actually cutting this a little short. There's a ton of other questions I would have loved to ask you and get to know, but it's a good stop for now. And maybe there'll be a round two here in the near future.
Sounds good. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks.